You noble diggers, all stand up now.
Hello my friends, and welcome to my channel. Today we will be talking about Adam Smith. I got a comment from a user who has named his profile Adam Smith, and this has touched upon a favorite topic of mine, which is that libertarians and capitalists don't understand Adam Smith at all, right? I have my copy of Wealth of Nations here. I've read it 30 plus times. I love Adam Smith as a thinker. There's a few thinkers before the 1800s who even approach his systematization of the world, his deep grasp of the economy, right? And it's too bad because he's been turned into this like uh, caricature, this caricature and weapon of the right. It's so disgusting, right? And so they'll talk about the invisible hand and how leftists don't understand the economy, but they themselves don't understand the invisible hand, right? And so I'm going to use two examples to show this, but just quickly, the invisible hand, right? The invisible hand refers to market forces that force things upon a governance, upon a administration, right? So if an administration wants to increase salt production, for instance, right? That's going to lead to a decrease in salt prices. It's going to lead to people hoarding resources for the production of salt, on and on and on, right? And so that's what the invisible hand means, that there are forces out there that are going to react, material forces that are knowable, but to quote a dumb man, they're the known unknowns, right? This invisible hand, though, what the right wingers try to make it out to be is that it's an almost a moral argument for laissez-faire, right? Which would make Adam Smith throw up in his mouth, right? Throughout this book, the rural gentleman is the target of his ire, right? And so I'm going to read a couple passages that I hope make this point, right? They're my favorite passages. The first comes from chapter 1, and it's about the division of labor, right? He's been talking up until now about a blacksmith who makes nails, right? And he says, there's probably three people, one person who feeds the wire through, another person who cuts it, and then someone else who's heating it. But that's not what we're focused on in this chapter. This is late in the chapter, and he's talking about how most people can't understand how interconnected the economy is, right? Observe the accommodation of the most common artificer or day laborer in a civilized and thriving country, and you will perceive that the number of people of whose industry a part, though but a small part, has been employed in procuring him this accommodation exceeds all computation. The woolen coat, for example, which covers the day laborer as coarse and rough as it may appear, is the produce of the joint labor of a great multitude of workmen, the shepherd, the sorter, the spinner, the weaver, the fuller, the dresser, with many others, must all join their different arts in order to complete even this homely production. How many merchants and carriers, besides, must have been employed in transporting the materials from some of those workmen to others, who often lived in a very distant part of the country? How much commerce and navigation in particular, how many shipbuilders, sailors, sailmakers, rope makers must have been employed in order to bring together the different drugs made use of by the dyer, which often come from the remotest corners of the world. What a variety too what a variety of labor too is necessary in order to produce the tools of the meanest of those workmen, to say nothing of such complicated machines as the ship of the sailor, the mill of the fuller, or even the loom of the weaver. Let us consider only what a variety of labor is requisite in order to form that very simple machine. I think that's enough. The point is, you morons don't get how interconnected the economy is, right? It's like when Trump puts these tariffs on, right? And then all of a sudden there's less goods coming from China. You retards don't understand that the trucking is the main issue there, right? That the truckers are paid, the truckers pay for food, the truckers pay for services, and that all those jobs associated spiderweb into the other portions of the economy. And so not only is Trump instituting a tax on Americans, right, but he's taking an axe to the economy at the same time. He's taking and cutting at the same time because he doesn't understand, right? He doesn't get the economy. Right? Here's the second part. This is from Book 2, Chapter 4. It's called On the Lending of Stock, right? I'll do some background on this one, I guess. Um, at this point in history, right, he's writing in the 1700s, usury, lending money, is strictly prohibited in most Christian nations, right? Becoming more tolerable, though. And his point here, just to make it clear, is that banning something that people are going to do anyways is bad for the economy, right? And you can take that for all sorts of things that conservatives have used their moralization to take a hatchet to over the years. You could think about the alcohol prohibitions. You could think about the war on drugs. You could think about the criminalization of sex work, right? These things do not accomplish their aims, and perhaps their aims are nefarious, right? To keep punishment on the poor. But to try and prohibit things that humans are going to do anyways is just to disrupt the economy, is just to commit negligence. Quote, in some countries, the interest of money has been prohibited by law, but as something can everywhere be made by the use of money, something ought everywhere to be paid for the use of it. This regulation, instead of preventing, has been found from experience to increase the evil of usury, the debtor being obliged to pay not only for the use of the money, but for the risk which his creditor runs by accepting a compensation for that use. He is obliged, if one may say so, to insure his creditor from the penalties of usuries. In countries where interest is permitted, the law, in order to prevent the extortion of usury, generally fixes the highest rate which can be taken without incurring a penalty. This rate always ought to remain somewhat above the lowest market price, or the money by or the price which is commonly paid for the use of the money by those who can give the most undoubted security. If the legal rate of interest in Great Britain, for example, was fixed so high as 8 or 10%, the great part of the money which was to be lent would be lent to prodigals and projectors, who alone would be willing to give this high interest. Sober people, who will give for the use of money no more than a part of what they are likely to make by the use of it, would not venture into the competition. A great part of the capital of the country would thus be kept out of the hands which were most likely to make a profitable and advantageous use of it, and thrown into those which were most likely to waste and destroy it. Where the legal rate of interest, on the contrary, is fixed but a very little above the lowest market rate, sober people are universally preferred as borrowers to prodigals and projectors. A great part of the capital of this country is thrown into the hands in which it is most likely to be employed with advantage. No law can reduce the common rate of interest below the lowest ordinary market rate at the time when that law is made, notwithstanding the edict of 1766, by which the French king attempted to reduce the rate of interest from 5 to 4%. Money continued to be lent in France at 5%, the law being evaded in several different ways. So you notice he puts an upper and lower limit on these things, right? On usury, right? He says 4 or 5% is probably best, because then it encourages people who are honest to take on those loans so as to better encourage economic growth, right? You should think about houses, or starting a family, a farmer looking to add a, a barn or something like that. But if you think about who is willing to take on a risk of 8 or 10%, those are people who are A, already have wealth, and B, are morally questionable, right? That they're willing to break the laws in order to reclaim that wealth. And in fact, the only way to make that kind of money would be to break other laws, right? To do fraud or something like that. And so the point is, Mr. Adam Smith, the user, you don't understand what you're talking about. You're a Nazi. You're an idiot. Right? You should read this book, The Wealth of Nations. It's great. It's a great book. But I guarantee you won't hold your ideology if you get all the way through it. Have a nice day. Hello, you've made it to the end of the video. Thank you. This channel has one mission: to prevent civilizational collapse associated with climate change, to prevent 100 million refugees by 2035, to stop 7 billion from starving to death by 2075. And we will do this through one main vehicle. We mean to unite the Anglosphere. We will do this by convincing the Commonwealth of His Majesty King Charles III to apply for statehood as one. And then with this new power, we will be able to negotiate in good faith with the rest of the world on how to tackle this crisis. Thank you and enjoy.